The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, a space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today.
Today we have a question from James, and James lives in Olympia, Washington. And James writes, I'd like to talk about money and trade. It is being reported that Rump approached Jamie Dimon about becoming the new Fed chair. Dimon has said he rejected that offer. Trump, of course, denies the offer was ever made. I would tend to believe Dimon over Trump. Trump has also indicated that he would like to take the Fed under executive control, effectively ending its independence. I'm pretty sure the panel sees this as a very bad idea. Yes, indeed. I'd ask that the panel stay with me, as I'll now be asking about something that seems unrelated, but could be if it all plays out. Trump is threatening a 10% tariff on European countries that do not support his Greenland takeover. The EU met and is talking about what they call a trade bazooka, quote unquote. As I understand it, this policy would deny the U.S. access to some EU market and impose export controls, among other measures. So here is my scenario. Let's say Trump gets his way, the Fed loses its independence, and the EU bazookas the U.S. trade. Could this entirely destabilize the U.S. economy? Which would be worse? The Fed losing its independence, or the EU's bazooka? If you could look at both issues separately and then as a complete scenario possibility. So we have two separate issues, and then as a combination.
Yeah,
Mark, Scott.
Let's take independence first, Scott. What do you think about independence of Fed chair or of the Fed?
Well, I think clearly it's extremely important that the Fed chair be independent. Our economy depends on that independence, and Trump is not the first president to not like it, but they've got to sort of talk him down on that one. We've seen some remarkable things from the Trump administration about the lackeys that he likes to have around him, and Scott Bessent, by the way, has turned into one of the really crazy one. Yesterday he was asked what the threat was, and he said the threat was the threat, basically. Mm-hmm. So, or the threat is the threat of the threat.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
A real wordsmith.
Yeah. And sort of literally begging the question, saying the proof is the thing itself. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah. Tautology. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
What was it? The national security risk is the national security risk, or whatever it is. It's some completely. Well, of course, he's a soybean farmer, or he says he is. So
right, and he's also he's a George Soros acolyte. Worked for George Soros for many years, and I don't think that MAGA knows that yet, but certainly letting them know the close ties that Bessent has to George Soros would be an eye-opener for them. Well, whatever. I mean, so the question here was about Jamie Dimon, who is speaking this week in Switzerland. What's that thing called? Big conference. The World
Davos.
The World Ski Championships? I don't know.
Trump will be there.
It was a chocolate eating contest in Switzerland. Davos, the World Financial Economic Forum.
Right.
Trump will be there Wednesday and Thursday.
Trump is bringing a whole crew with him. He's bringing the whole cabinet. He's bringing business leaders. He's going there with a lot of people. Jamie Dimon is speaking at that conference, and it was proposed by somebody today. I was just trying to look up who I had read that from. I'm reading so much these days so quickly that it's hard to piece it all together sometimes. that he's got to, stand up to Trump in this speech. That the business community may actually be better placed than Republican senators that we talked about in an earlier podcast would be to rein in Trump and to get him to be a little bit more reasonable rather than just flying off the handle all the time and saying all the crazy things that he's saying and making all the crazy decisions that he's making. Is that this is the time for Jamie Dimon and other business leaders to take the lead. Could happen.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing? I was thinking back, Scott, as you were just speaking about business leaders, when the gentleman, the CEO of Exxon, spoke at the meeting that Trump had that was with the oil executives about Venezuela, that Trump supposedly had spoken with them about capturing Maduro and going in and making the $100 billion investment into fixing up Venezuela's oil infrastructure before capturing Maduro, which apparently Trump did not do. The ExxonMobil said, "Look, we're not going in a third time. It's uninvestable." As I understand it, Trump then wanted to exclude ExxonMobil from anything in Venezuela going forward now because the ExxonMobil CEO didn't speak nicely or something like that at this meeting. So I don't know if anybody can reach Trump at this point. Anyway, just go ahead.
When I was a kid, my best friend lived next door. And we were really, really close. When we got into a fight, as sometimes happens, and he went into his house, and I started hanging out with my two brothers, as I often did also. When we were sort of, I don't know what we were playing, but we were playing in the front yard. And he came out and sat on his front porch with a box of yodels and started eating his yodels one after another and saying in a really loud voice, "Man, I got a whole box of yodels here. I wish I had a friend to share my yodels with. But if I don't have a friend, I'm going to eat my yodels all by myself." And I think for somehow that we're at a yodel moment here, and that we need business to start saying, we could really use a president who isn't the biggest douchebag in the world and could somehow be like a normal person that we could actually do some business with, and then we can do some really cool stuff. But right now we're just eating our yodels by ourselves and make Trump change, because I'm sure I went for the yodels. I don't remember that part of the story, but I'm sure that he and I patched things up and I got a couple of yodels out of it. It can be a very, very enticing offer.
Yeah.
And if Trump doesn't bite literally, because he can't maintain it due to his mental incapacity, then I think that might also become fairly evident as time goes by to everyone involved, because we need somebody who is competent and capable actually making decisions in leadership. So anyway, yeah, go ahead. I just wanted to what you were saying maybe think of the Exxon guy and the response later on, which was very petty.
What I want to know is, do they still make yodels? I don't think so. I don't know. The Fed as independent is almost a requirement. I mean, there's just no doubt about that. That has to stay that way. It has to be independent of the government, because, and we brought this up before. It'd be like somebody saying, kind of like what Trump has said, "I'm going to give you a $2,000 check." But of course, when he was approached about it, he said, "Did I really say that?" Yeah, you did. Yes, you did say that. It's just like that $5,000 you're supposed to get with the Doge refund, and that never happened. I mean, this is a case where if the Fed was not independent, then politicians could manipulate the economy in short term to be able to gain votes. And we've mentioned that before here on this podcast. So I think that we all know that, yes, definitely, it has to stay independent. Jamie Dimon, I heard the Jamie Dimon story that he was offered. I tend to agree with you, James. I would believe Jamie Dimon, even though he's not the most trustworthy person on the face of the earth, as before I would believe Trump. And I think that he is smart by not taking it. If this story is true, he probably is very smart for not taking it, and nobody can accuse Jamie Dimon of being stupid, because he sees. I mean, look at the history of all the people that really came into the Trump administration, both the first one and the second one, and look what happened to them after they left. And Jamie Dimon's got a pretty cushy job. What, Citi? Citibank. I mean, he's got a pretty cushy job. Why risk it? I'm surprised Tillerson risked it, to be perfectly honest with you. And I never really thought very much of him, but I'm surprised. A lot of the people that took jobs there risked it because, you look at the history and you see where they've ended up. Yeah, bro.
So what happens if Trump can't find anyone who is credible? I mean, genuinely credible. And what happens if it's the guy I can't remember who he's thinking of now, Ken somebody or other, who is definitely a sycophant.
Okay.
Is this a position that has to be what is
approved?
It now? Confirmed by the
yes.
Senate? Yeah. But look who they've confirmed already, Christine.
Right. So you talk about, credibility. Well, I mean, look at the schmokies that they've confirmed already. I mean, there's not a lot of credibility in that group. The fact is what we can always hang our hat on is the Fed chair is not the last. He's one of 30. So his vote counts no more than one. Now, he could try to influence things as the Fed chair, but if those other Fed people don't go along, too bad. That's too bad. So the Fed chair is kind of like being, as I've said this before, kind of like being the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. John Roberts gets one vote, and it doesn't always go his way. So, he can put whoever he wants. Will they confirm him? Probably. Like they've confirmed all the other, dumbasses that they've put in there. Sure.
To your point, Brooke, if it was Kevin Hassett, it would be a nightmare. Because he has shown himself to not be able to stand up to Trump at all and to just grin like an idiot while he repeats everything that Trump wants him to say. So,
but he's still only one vote.
That would be, yeah. But I mean, the chairman of the Fed is supposed to be the important guy who galvanizes the others, convinces them. He does a lot of politicking behind the scenes. He makes a lot of phone calls to people and makes sure that they're all on the same page. It's very rare that we saw something happen that happened the last time they all met together, which was that there was some dissent in both directions, with some of the bankers saying, that they want higher interest rates and some of them saying that they wanted lower interest rates. But it ended up coming out in the wash there and ended up, Powell ended up getting what he wanted to get.
Right.
So if it is Kevin Hassett and he is confirmed, then what?
Then we have a Fed chair who's going to do exactly what he's told.
Right.
Okay. So then that happens this May, correct?
I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know when.
I know
Powell's term is over this May.
Yeah.
But I don't know when. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's this May.
And again, the Fed will continue to run even if there's a lapse. I mean, it doesn't stop. And yeah, Scott's right. He's going to do whatever. If it is this guy, he's going to do whatever Trump says he can do. But he only has so much power to be able to do it. He can, politic all he wants. Now, I've heard that Powell's reign as the Fed chair, he has not been a person that has done a lot of the politicking, like a lot of other Fed chairs have. He basically has stated his opinion. Has he done a little bit of politicking? Sure, of course he has to. But he hasn't been the constant on the phone. But what reporting is that everybody, that maybe some of his predecessors were, because people respected Powell. I mean, they said, yeah, okay, he knows what he's talking about when he's talking about money. So, that does have have an influence. If the rest of the Fed members do not believe that the Fed chair has any credibility, you might see more pushback. You might see a lot more pushback, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. All right, so the bazooka. Oh, the bazooka. Yeah. Boy, that would be bad for us. Plain and simple, James. That would be very, very interesting that they actually got together and started talking about that. And I think it was reported the other day that the EU owns $7 trillion in U.S. bonds. There's another way they could fight back. They could totally destroy the bond market. That would require China to come in and buy up more, which they could, which means that we'd be really owned by the Chinese. Because right now, I believe they hold the maximum of U.S. bonds, and they would have more. And that would be bad. So the bazooka, and you're right, it is, denying access to some manufacturers of the U.S. It is also basically semi-trade embargo, the way you kind of read it, and you know what they're talking about, and those import controls, and the export controls. So yeah, and I like how they always say and other measures, and I did read that. And the question is what are those other measures? Aren't these measures bad enough? And so yeah, this could be fairly devastating to the United States.
Scott, you were saying in an earlier podcast about no longer using U.S. currency and other things that the European Union could do. Do you think those would be other measures? Like completely divesting?
It certainly is. I mean, look, if Powell was replaced by somebody who's not credible, then the currency of the United States is not credible. And why would you hold on to dollars when there are other currencies that are more stable and more reliable than the dollar? That's just common sense. So, I don't think anybody's going to rush to do that any more than I think they're going to rush to throw huge tariffs on American goods, or sell off bonds. What Carney's weapon was. I do think that they'll talk about it at least. I know Germany basically talked down Macron, right, in this latest round, but who knows how long that side of it, the list, we need to be cautious. We need to be, we need to be patient and wait till this all sort of plays out. I don't. It's not gonna last forever. Eventually, they're going to do something to fight back. And we've already we've already driven Canada to China. We've already driven a lot of people to China. They're making deals without us all over the place.
Did Germany talk Macron out of it? Merz Germany. What is it? Friedrich Merz talked Francis Macron out of it before Trump sent that letter to Norway. Do you know?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Okay, because that could be a catalyst, that letter.
Oh, sure.
Potentially?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. But, I don't, look, I mean, world leaders tend to be cautious and tend to move slowly. I don't think anybody's going to do anything rash except Trump. And if
exactly,
he's gonna drive everybody into a corner. And once they're cornered, they're going to fight back any way they can. And I think we've seen what the possibilities are. Well, I'd have to go back and read Paul Krugman's stuff on that. to see what the message was that was sent. But clearly Trump got that message and backed down on a lot of those April 2nd tariffs that he had imposed. Back down. That's when he started getting the name Taco, and said, well, we're gonna take a pause on these tariffs until we can, hopefully straighten things out. So he's proven himself time and time and time again that he'll say something crazy, and then when confronted, like a bully does, he'll step down and take a pause on it and say, well, we'll revisit this in a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, he's done a lot of really horrible things. He's done horrible things to Ukraine. This Greenland thing just doesn't seem to be going away. What he's done with Venezuela is pretty horrible thing, I think. Is no benefit to the Venezuelan people, as far as I can tell. And
no.
And hurting them, in fact, even more.
Mm-hmm. As I understand it, the acting president is worse than Maduro was, and the rest of the government, of course, is in place. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I was thinking when after the capture or kidnapping of Maduro, someone asked Trump about Greenland, and he said, well, I'm not thinking about that now. Ask me in about 2 months. That was like a couple of weeks ago, if I remember. I mean, time just seems to compress. It doesn't, I mean, I'm losing track of when various events happened. And now here we are already with escalations on Greenland, and it wasn't 2 months ago for Machado. What was that, like the beginning of January? So this was less than 2 weeks ago, something like that. What concerns me is that as Trump's mental unwellness increases and as his mental capacity decreases, I think that his potential to back down will also decrease. And he may have more and more escalatory episodes that are closer and closer together. I don't know. I'm not a psychiatrist or a mental neurologist. I've seen how aging progresses, and this is a concern that no one seems to be doing anything about again, as far as curtailing these behaviors. So yeah, what is it? Sounds like the European, then, as far as our listener's question is concerned, then the European bazooka is a far more of a concern for you both than the Fed chair, although they do relate to one another, as our listener was also asking.
Well, yeah, they do relate to each other. Scott made the point that the Fed chair, if he is reliable and is trusted, that bolsters the trust in the U.S. currency. The reason the U.S. currency is the standard today and not the Chinese currency is because it's believed that the Chinese have a tendency to manipulate the currency value. They're the second largest economy, but there's been suggestions that they do have a tendency to manipulate the currency value, which makes it not as reliable as the United States. If we were to appear to be also manipulating the currency value because of the Fed chair, I could see the U.S. dollar being replaced, maybe not by the Chinese, maybe by the euro, maybe, who knows? Probably not the British pound. But probably maybe the euro, because that is a widely used currency. And yeah, that would be bad. Which one is worse? To be perfectly honest with you, neither one of them are any good for the United States' economy. And let's think about that for just a minute. If we put it together, because I think that's what James is asking. If we were to select a Fed chair, and the Fed was no longer independent, the confidence in the U.S. dollar would decrease, and the U.S. dollar would no longer be as valuable as it is today. Add on to that the EU Bazooka, which basically would curtail our exports, their exports to us, and other possible, sanctions that could be used. And then let's throw in the idea that they own so much of the bond of U.S. bonds. We could be in a situation, and I'm not saying this is remotely possible. I'm saying this is worst case. This is doomsday kind of a situation where, like post World War II Germany or pre World War II Germany, when it took basically a wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks to buy a loaf of bread, because now your currency isn't worth anything. The prices of everything is even more. So you think you got a bad economy now? And I think all of us say, the economy isn't great, but it's not doomsday bad. That could be where it would put us. And we're vulnerable. We are extremely vulnerable to this, simply because, and Scott has pointed this out so many times, our greatest commodity to the world is we're consumers. Well, if your money isn't worth anything and nobody's trading with you, that takes your great commodity, and as we've said before, the rentier state idea of being consumers, and basically puts us in great jeopardy. Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I think to that point, I think that consumers continue to spend. Consumer confidence is I think it may be at an all-time low right now, but the economy continues to hum along, at least as far as we can tell, right? Because economic indicators, as reported by this government, are unreliable, to say the least. But we have, that is a natural resource that we have, is the consumer continuing to spend money. And look, I mean, people say, well, if they're not paying the tariffs themselves, why are they so angry about them? Because their economies depend on U.S. consumers buying things. And if the prices goes too high, then Americans will stop buying those things. It hasn't happened yet, but it could. And then as far as so that's the bazooka end of it, right? And then as far as the sort of de-dollarization of the world, they've all stood up and said, we're not doing this. We still believe in the dollar. But we should not ignore the fact that what started out as BRICS, which was Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, has now all added to it Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. It's a growing organization of trade and currency that won't now, but could eventually replace the dollar with some kind of functional BRICS currency along the same lines as the EU, the euro, and could someday replace the dollar as the reserve currency for other countries, who can sell off, what was it, Mark, $8 trillion worth of bonds in Europe alone.
Yeah, 7 or 8, yeah, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
Another thing
that doesn't even include what the Chinese own.
Right. That's
and
like
what Canada owns.
That's that it has to be leverage. It's got to be leverage. You would have to be a madman to put that at risk.
Canada was the number one holder of bonds. I don't know if it still is or not after Mark Carney's sell-off. And in China is buying some of its oil. I don't know if it's oil and gas or just oil with the yuan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly or not. I don't know how much. But some of the right's talking points have been, well, the Venezuela thing, now it's deprived China of its oil. Well, no, it's deprived China of something like 3% of its oil that China can easily replace with Canadian or I think with Canadian oil, for example. So we've not deprived China of anything by going into Venezuela. We've just created more problems for others. We may be decimating Cuba, which I think, as we were talking on a much earlier podcast, I think that's Marco Rubio's whole purpose. I don't think that the American public understands at all the connections between an independent Fed and using the dollar globally, and what is being risked for the American public with all these shenanigans by Trump and the impulsiveness of his behavior globally.
Right. And the fact is if we look at this from a historical standpoint, which I always like to look at these from a historical standpoint, if you disrupt the entire world's economy, what does that generally lead to? War.
Yes, war, yeah.
I mean, that's what happens.
And depression.
Depression. Well, yeah. I mean, but the fact is that, if the world's economy is disrupted and disrupting the U.S. economy, which I think is something that has held back a lot of these countries. I think they recognize that if we totally destabilize the U.S. economy, that is going to have a worldwide, repercussions. There's, it's just like dropping a stone into the pond, and it's going to have worldwide repercussions. We talked about this before when we were talking about the Ukraine and the Russian war. The idea of a vacuum in Russia is unthinkable, is totally unthinkable. You have to find a way to be able to let Russia lose and back out, with some semblance of maintaining their state, because if you don't allow them to do that, there becomes a vacuum. And when we're talking about the United States and the economy, we're talking about a vacuum of the entire world economy. And I think that's an important thing for us to keep in mind. And I think it is something that a lot of these countries have kept in mind. But some of the actions that they're taking, Canada getting involved with China, the EU getting involved in South America, the EU getting involved with China. I think those are the stopgaps that they're looking to create to be able to absorb a collapse of the United States economy. And I think that's, and like Scott said, we consume. Who do they sell to? Well, they sell to other people. I mean, that's basically all there is to it.
They've been beginning to, yeah.
Yep, and they're beginning to do that. And I think that, the trade bazooka and all that stuff, I don't think it's going to happen yet. I don't think they're going to resort, at least not resort to the full force of it. They might put a couple of things involved into it, just as a shot across the bow. But once these trade partnerships get really solidified, and the world has basically eliminated the United States from the equation, then I could see them doing it. Then I could see them saying, screw it, the hell with the United States. And then what'll happen then all depends on who's in charge of the United States. If Trump's still in charge, hey, we might go to war with the rest of the world. Very possible, because it's America first. And, again, when you think out that scenario, that's just a bad scenario.
Or to team up with Russia and China to divide the world up. And if all three of these nations are united together, which would be really, really bizarre considering where we're coming from. But if we were allied together, nobody could resist us. And Trump has brought that up numerous times over the last 10 years, which is why he continues to think, I guess, why Russia has that viability. I don't understand that.
But
look, here's the bigger point. I think there's a line from one of my favorite movies, a very underrated, I think, Coen Brother movie called Miller's Crossing, where there's a head mobster played by what's his name? An Irish actor. And he says, you don't hold elective office in this town. You run things because people think you run things. Once they stop thinking you run things, you stop running things, or something to that effect. And that's where we are right now. We are the most powerful country in the world. But if the rest of the world bands together against us, as we've seen, by the way, with oil, we're the number one oil exporter in the world, but we cannot by ourselves control the global price of oil because 40 nations in OPEC Plus can outweigh us, and they get to say. So, we're seeing trade first. We may see militaries form alliances without us. We only run this world because people think and accept us running this world. Once they stop accepting it, we stop running it, and dire consequences will follow.
And unfortunately, Trump believes he runs the world.
Yeah.
And I don't think he understands that others are not going to be necessarily pushed around the way he's been able to do with other people in his life for his entire life.
Yeah.
And that's a problem because his psychology has been built on this structure that he always gets what he wants.
Well, yes.
Miller's Crossing is a good movie. Watch it and you'll see the whole thing right there.
There you go. And we'll figure out who the Irish actor is.
Yes. So Gabriel Byrne.
Okay, he's a good actor. I like him.
And who's the older guy who Albert Finney.
Albert Finney.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I know who that is.
And Albert Finney's the old man who, when he calls the mayor and the chief of police to his office, they come scurry into his office as quickly as they can, hat in hands, and they do what he tells them to do. And he throws it all away for the love of a woman. It's a really great movie. Yeah. Just
like the Tammany Hall guy, what was it, Boss Tweed? Although he didn't, I don't know if he threw anything away, but, Boss Tweed built the American Museum of Natural History. So while he may have been a terrible person in other ways, he did build that museum.
It was corrupt, but it wasn't.
Oh yeah,
he was.
He was.
And he didn't. And Boss Tweed was not very good at predicting things, just sort of like we are, because he really thought that Chester Arthur was going to be his guy. And when Chester Arthur, through the death of the president became the president, Chester Arthur basically turned on him. And there went Boss Tweed. So there you have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
I named one of my roosters Boss Tweed.
There you go.
So anyway, yeah. So thank you for the question again from our wonderful listener, and I hope we answered it. But yeah,
hey, we did our best. Okay,
we'll find out in May.
There you go. We'll find out. And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening!